In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, 3 brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and co-host, Chad Robinson. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful this afternoon. How you doing?
Good. We're doing it in a whole new location.
Yeah. Was going to be the basement, but the football's on, so wife and daughter have to watch that, and we are upstairs in the attic slash office.
Yeah, it's like a fanboy layer in here. You've got like all kinds of, I don't know what you call it, memorabilia and accessories of like all kinds of stuff, whether it be horror movies and Legos, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, everywhere. It's very fitting for the show.
Lilo and Stitch, my Walking Dead comics, courtesy of the guests.
Yeah. So today, though, I'm pretty excited. You know why?
Why is that?
First time guest.
Oh, wow.
Joining us from the state of Virginia, Elizabeth Fickenscher. Did I do that right?
You did.
All right. How are you doing, Elizabeth?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful, warm, humid, as per the course. We don't have an autumn, really, in Richmond, Virginia. It just skips straight from summer to winter.
So, tell the folks at home who you are and what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm originally from West Virginia, and I've lived in Richmond, Virginia since 1995. For work, I'm the industry liaison for a software company that makes tools for third-party Amazon sellers, and I'm also a freelance writer.
Very cool. So you went one state down, we went one state up, but what is the last movie you saw?
I watch so many movies in a week. It's crazy. I rewatched H20 on Tuesday, but then I recently went to Utah for work, and I watched a couple movies on the plane while I was doing some work on my computer. So I watched the 2 horror movies I could find on the in-flight entertainment. In 10 years, we can talk about those.
Okay. Anyone we would recognize?
One of them was called Greta.
Oh, yeah.
It had Chloe Grace Moretz. It was interesting. It was definitely a good thriller kind of movie. And the other one was, I want to do the pronunciation correct, but it was La Llorona.
Oh, yes. La Llorona. Yes.
Yeah. And so it was sort of the Insidious universe, which are so the priest from the Annabelle movies was the crossover character in that one.
I did not know this.
Yeah. He has this flashback moment where he says, I didn't believe in the supernatural until, and then there's a picture of the Annabelle doll, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the
That's
Conjuring
fun.
universe continues.
I try and keep
Yes.
up with that. I somehow have missed this installment. I'll have to look into that.
I got off after The Nun.
I haven't seen that yet either.
Didn't enjoy it.
I was super excited about The Nun. I'm not going to lie, but I was not overwhelmed. I was underwhelmed by The Nun.
So, what was your first movie theater memory?
Empire Strikes Back. I'm dating myself. I was born in 1977, so I was about 3 when Empire came to theaters, and my mom took me because she's an enormous Star Wars fan.
Well, that is raising your kids right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what was your take when you went in? So you're that's a pretty dark movie for when you're young.
Well, I definitely wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I was obviously young and misled at that point of my life. But we had HBO when I was a kid, so when A New Hope came out, on HBO for mass distribution, I was able to see that, and then Empire again, and I grew up on those movies. So we won't talk about the prequels so much or the new stuff that Disney's doing, but the original trilogy is canon in my family and watched regularly.
Well said.
So, what is the best movie to watch when you're homesick and you don't feel good? What's your pick-me-up?
I actually watch horror movies more than I watch any other kind of movies. So I have a soft spot for Insidious: The Last Key because it features Lin Shaye more than the rest of the Insidious movies do. And I think she's splendid. I just love her. I also am very, very fond of Babe, Pig in the City. It's so much better than the first Babe. It's surreal and satisfying, truly quotable lines. And I just love that movie to pieces. So that's another comfort movie for me, and I have a handful of other. Labyrinth is one. I think I first saw that when I was 11, so my first official celebrity crush was David Bowie.
That's actually a response we've gotten on this show a couple of times. Believe it or not, you might be like the third person to say exactly that about the Labyrinth. So
people of a certain age, you just can't deny Bowie might be the most enticing version of Bowie. Definitely cinematically a little bit of a wuss in the hunger, but yeah, Labyrinth is definitely up there.
Babe with the power. So what is your scariest movie moment?
You know, it's funny because I watch horror a lot, so I don't really get scared, which is kind of a bummer because that's what horror movies are for. And I've loved horror movies ever since I was a kid. I was deathly afraid of the vampire from the Electric Company, the kids show. Which is odd because he was a vegetable vampire, but also at that, around that time as a kid, the Bunnicula series came out of books, and so maybe I'm just afraid of vegetable sucking vampires instead of blood sucking vampires. But yeah, the Electric Company vampire was super, super scary to me.
Yeah, that is an unexpected answer given your wide breadth of horror movies. I wasn't seeing that. I didn't see that coming. Today, what movie are we going to do, Chad?
We are going to do 1998's Halloween H20.
20 years later.
Yeah.
I you know me, I like to get the colon in there.
Subtitles and everything.
Yes. So this movie comes out in 1998, as Chad mentioned. The movie has a budget of $17 million. It grosses $55 million, so it's the highest grossing movie in the Halloween movie franchise. I'm not sure if that still holds true with the 2018, but that's the best piece of information I had at this point in time. So this movie places at 41 on the box office on the year. It places ahead of Small Soldiers in 42, and it places just behind What Dreams May Come at 40, so that's a good one, by the way.
I like Small Soldiers. I'll defend that.
Oh, well, okay. I'll take the over. You'll take the under on that one.
Okay.
So, and number one movie on the year that year was Saving Private Ryan, and which probably has more blood in it than Halloween H20.
More people died, that's for sure.
Definitely. IMDb gives Halloween H20 a 5.7, and the critics of Rotten Tomatoes give it a 52%, not particularly high, and the audience scores just behind at 49%. Didn't win any awards, so with that being said, Elizabeth, have you seen Halloween H20 before? If so, what was your first time? What was it like coming back to it now?
Well, I first saw it in the theater in 1998, which was super exciting to me because I had seen the one with Paul Rudd in 1995, and that was sort of a disappointment. I went by myself, actually. It was my first year in Richmond, and I went to see that in a theater that was like way across town, and I didn't know where it was going, and then it was like 80-something minutes long, and there was hardly any Dr. Loomis in it because Donald Pleasance died during the filming of that movie, I think, but
yeah.
I was super excited about the return of Jamie Lee and how this was going to just pick up after Halloween 2. So we could sort of forget all that nonsense that happened in between. So that was exciting to me. So I saw it in 1998 when it came out in the theater, and I've watched it pretty frequently. I've got all of the Halloween movies on DVD, and it's one of the ones in highest rotation. There's a scene that we'll talk about later that is one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. And it's sort of an odd when I'm feeling disenfranchised or not empowered at all. I watch this movie for some reason, and because of the scene that we're going to talk about later. So
it's comfort food.
I have an odd emotional, I have an odd emotional connection to this movie.
Fantastic, Chad. What about you?
Yeah, I did not see this movie when it came out. It was one of those. It was R. I couldn't see them. I was too young for it. So it took me a couple years after, probably mid-2000s, when I saw it. And, my context before was Halloween 5 and 6 and even Halloween 4. and everyone's down on those. So this was very exciting. I was thrilled to have Laurie Strode back. So I was very excited. I watched this last year. I did a binge of all the Halloween movies, including Rob Zombie's back to back to back, and finished off with Halloween 2018. So yeah, I had just seen it as recently as last year, and it's up there for the Halloween series for me.
What is it like returning to it now today?
I still enjoy it. I feel like Halloween 2018 has hurt its legacy a little bit because
By writing it out?
H20 came in. This movie doesn't exist in a vacuum. It came in off of 4, 5, and 6 that people were mad at, particularly 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And so this was the return, and then Halloween 2018 kind of ignored everything else and still had Jamie Lee Curtis, and so it's tough. Like, this movie was the best Halloween movie in 20-some years.
Interesting. So for me, this one is special for me because this hit me in 1998, and I had not seen the original Halloween. But
Oh no!
I know, and but I had seen the advertisements for H2O. MTV was pushing it real hard, and they were, and
well, LL Cool J.
I mean,
right?
Yeah, this was definitely for the MTV generation of this time
we're cramming teen heartthrobs in left and right.
Yeah, Josh Hartnett for sure.
Oh, that was his first film too.
Yeah.
And Michelle Williams from Dawson's Creek.
Anyway, everybody was really excited for this triumphant return. The advertisement campaign really caught my eye, and for some reason, I had never been open to horror movies, but what this did was it put Halloween as a series and a franchise back on the map, because people were responding well to this one. And so what was happening is AMC and other channels were starting to put the original ones into heavier rotation than they had previously. Or maybe they had been there all along and they really hadn't been on my radar. And again, getting that marketing behind H2O put this franchise on my radar. Maybe you can tell me, Elizabeth, did Halloween kind of go away and come back with this? Or was it there all along and I just didn't notice?
Well, Halloween was always there. It was there in an underwhelming kind of way with especially 5 and 6, I think. Although there was plenty of marketing behind those movies, but this was the return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, and that was what everybody kind of wanted. She's talked about in all but I think 3, right?
Yes.
But she's not there, and in this one she's there, and it feels to me a lot more like a Halloween movie, like 1 and 2 did, even though there was no Carpenter involvement.
Yeah.
Actually, from what I've read, Jamie Lee actually came up with this idea. She was like, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" And she asked John Carpenter if he was interested in. He said, "Nah, it's okay." Later on, she actually said it was a paycheck movie, which is really disappointing to me because I think she should be proud of her performance in this one. And she did come back and do Halloween 2018, which totally ignores this movie, like we talked about before. But I feel like this was a way bigger deal than any of the previous movies before Halloween 2.
Yeah, all the other major franchises were sputtering. You had Nightmare on Elm Street. They had just come out with a fairly bad movie that had kind of ended the franchise until New Nightmare.
Child's Play had become a mockery of itself at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Friday the 13th, they were getting ready to come up with Jason X, and that's not saying good things for the franchise. Although
no.
I kind of like as corny as it is, but the 9th Friday the 13th was not good. The only major player that was doing well, and we see influence in this movie, is Scream.
And because it was a new franchise. It was something fresh.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the Scream influence later, but again, I mentioned that I hadn't seen any Halloween movies, so it was Halloween H2O that made me go back and see the original, and I was really taken by the original John Carpenter movie, so I always will appreciate Halloween H2O for putting the 78 John Carpenter's Halloween on my radar. I refused to watch this until I got to it. I didn't realize there were that many sequels in between it, so it actually took me several years to get to Halloween H2O, because as Chad sometimes gives me crap about this, but I have to see everything in the order it came out. I'm a chronologist.
This had some pretty relevant context. I mean,
so I enjoyed the movie at the time. I don't think that it holds a candle to the 78 one or the Halloween 2. I feel like those are...
Oh, no.
And so those two to me are on another level.
But after slogging through the in-betweens, it definitely was a new it was a kind of a throwback to the quality of Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, and certainly way better than Halloween Resurrection, that I hope we never talk about.
We didn't prepare for this, but could you, like, just out of curiosity, could you guys rank your Halloween movies?
Oh yeah.
Do we want to include Rob Zombie remakes?
Let's exclude
or do we want to
those.
exclude? Okay.
You do whatever you want.
I feel like I've been harsh enough to Mr. Zombie. I enjoy your music, not your films, sir.
Do you want to go first, Chad?
Oh, sure. I'm going to exclude the Rob Zombie movies, but they would be at the bottom if I were to do it. But Resurrection is by far the worst. And then Halloween 5, followed by Paul Rudd's Halloween 6, then Halloween 4, and then I think I'm going to put H2O. Then I'm going to go Halloween 2. Halloween 3 is my number 2 movie, and the original Halloween is my top Halloween. Oh, I'm forgetting 2018. You know what? I'll put 2018 right after Halloween 3, so it will be number 3 for me.
Man, you are always kind to Season of the Witch, the third one, the non-Michael Myers.
I love it. I really do. It's got probably the best ending of the entire series.
Okay, Elizabeth, how about you? Where are you on the Halloween movies?
I agree with Chad up until I think like number 4. I would put Season of the Witch at number 5, 2018 probably at number 4, H2O at number 3, Halloween 2 is number 2, and Halloween 1 is number 1. I love 1 and 2.
Yep, very fair.
A whole lot.
Yeah, so for me, I'm a little different. My least favorite one, let's just put the Rob Zombie ones in a special realm of bad. Those are really down there for me. And then I'm going to go with the Revenge of Michael Myers, which is the 5th one. I really, really didn't like that one. It's the one that has all the comedic relief of these cops running around, and it's just a very poorly made movie. I would then go Resurrection would be there. I'm a little bit kinder to Paul Rudd than you guys, so I'm going to go ahead and put the 3rd one, Season of the Witch.
Oh, he chewed every scene though. Sorry, go ahead.
And then I go Curse of Michael Myers with Paul Rudd there. 4, the Return of Michael Myers, Halloween H2O. Then I go with the 2018 Halloween, then Halloween 2, and then Halloween.
Okay.
There are some similarity. Like the bottom third is the same. I have Season of the Witch a little bit lower than you guys.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm a little nicer to Paul Rudd than you guys.
Top 3 to 4 is Halloween 2018, and Halloween 2.
Yeah.
So, and H2O's winding up in the top percentage of these two. So.
Well, and in defense of Paul Rudd, honestly, it was his first film, right? And he had a really bad script to work with. I just feel like in subsequent later Paul Rudd works, when he does a fake creepy kind of voice, he's evoking his Tommy character from the Halloween film. I feel like he has spent his entire career making fun of that movie in a really, really subtle way that maybe he himself doesn't even realize. But in his defense, he didn't have a lot to work with in that film.
That's fair. Yeah. I think giving Michael Myers a backstory was a flawed concept to begin with, which they tried to do.
When it was a dumb backstory.
And they killed off Jamie. I don't like that.
Yes.
No, I don't either.
Also, I want to throw one plug out there. So while we're talking Halloween H2O, Chad Robinson here was in guest form on his first episode on, I believe.
Yeah.
In episode 4, if you're new to the show, if you're a new listener, go all the way back to episode 4 and listen to the episode that we did on 1978 John Carpenter. We had a different co-host back then, co-creator John Flack, but Chad will be on it, and it'll be a good primer for this one too. So that being said, there will be spoilers that lie ahead, so if you have not seen Halloween H2O, you may want to give this a pause, go check out the movie and come back and enjoy it. Spoil this when we come back. Christopher Walken here to tell you about my favorite podcast, the Retro Movie Roundtable. It's a fun listen if you like movies. I myself have been in movies like Deer Hunter, Dead Zone, and Catch Me If You Can. If you like this podcast like I do, go to iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify. Wherever you get your podcast, give them a 5-star review and comments on the show. I even gave them a like on Facebook and wrote to John and Russell at Retro Movie Roundtable Roundtable at yahoo.com. One of the great joys of my career was hearing the Retro Movie Roundtable talk about my movies. Oh man, you're gonna love these guys. Wow. Alright, we're back, and as previously mentioned, there will be spoilers that lie ahead, so if you haven't seen Halloween H20 20 years later, watch out. It's coming your way. Now, Elizabeth, for those who haven't seen this movie since 1998, can you refresh people's memories with what happens in it?
You bet I can. The movie kicks off with Nurse Marion, who was Dr. Loomis's nurse from the first movie, and her house has been broken into. And she goes to her neighbor's house to call the cops, and they're teenagers, a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt and his friend. They call the cops, but he decides to go check out her house, comes back, says nobody was there. She goes home, sees that all of her files have been rifled through. The file for Laurie Strode is gone, so bum, bum, bum. She goes back next door to check on her neighbors, I think is the way it goes, and there's Joseph Gordon-Levitt with an ice skate through the face. She goes back to her house and is subsequently murdered by Michael Myers. Michael Myers is there. Laurie Strode is living as Carrie Tate, and she's the headmistress of an elite remote private school in California. She's a mom. She's got a teenage son played by young Josh Hartnett. This is his first film role. She's a helicopter mom to the nth. She's a functioning alcoholic, control freak, totally wrought by the previous traumas of her life. Her son wants just to be a normal kid. He's got a girlfriend, young Michelle Williams, a best friend who's a wacky sidekick, and the wacky sidekick has a girlfriend. And basically, once we get to the school, obviously we know Michael's coming for Laurie. Laurie kind of senses that Michael's coming for her. She thinks this on Halloween every year. Of course, it's Halloween. Would be a Halloween movie if it wasn't Halloween. All the kids are supposed to go to a camping trip in Yosemite. John, which is Laurie Strode's son, isn't allowed to go because she's super paranoid and super protective. And she ends up saying he can go. He pretends that he's going to go, but he stays because his girlfriend has to stay behind. And he and the girlfriend and their friend are going to have a party to celebrate Halloween because he's never celebrated Halloween because he knows his mom's backstory and he knows about Michael Myers. So, of course, Michael shows up, kills the friends because they're expendable in any Halloween movie. It's always the friends first. Charlie gets his throat slit again in a dumbwaiter. We get the first brutal stabbing scene of Charlie's girlfriend. She gets hung from a light fixture. Josh Hartnett and Michelle Williams' characters find them. There's a chase scene. They run. Everybody connects, and then we have the first standoff between Laurie and Michael Myers. Adam Arkin's in it as the guidance counselor of the school, and Carrie's boyfriend. She tells him about her past. Laurie manages to get her son and his girlfriend out of the school. Her boyfriend's dead at this point. She thinks that LL Cool J's character is dead, and she decides she's going to confront Michael. Then it's just all Laurie versus Michael. And then, of course, there's we think he's dead. He's not really dead. At the end of the film, Laurie steals the ambulance that his supposed dead body is in. He, of course, gets up from the body bag that he's in. She hits the brakes. He flies through the window. She hits him. She runs off a cliff. She drives him up against a tree, and he's trapped in between the vehicle and the tree. And after a tender moment with her brother, cuts his head off unceremoniously. It's a great ending until you watch Resurrection, and then it's not. Slow build. You've got the death at the very beginning of the two kids and Nurse Marion, and then it's about an hour into the film before Charlie and the girlfriend get it. So there's a lot of build. There's a lot of character development with who Laurie is now as an adult. We get an idea of she and her son's relationship and his resentment of her overprotectiveness and paranoia and functional alcoholism and all that kind of stuff. So there's some complexity built in there that I found interesting.
Very thorough there. And so one of the things that they chose to do here, this movie decides to get rid of Halloween's 3 through 6. Like, completely, they're not mentioned. There's no mentioning of a daughter of Laurie Strode. There's no mentioning of the Halloween season of the witch, where there's the candy that's
I wish the Silver Shamrock had had some kind of cameo.
Yeah,
they did have the mask in 2018. They had the mask from Halloween 3.
In a way, for me, I really like that they got rid of the other stuff. If you couldn't tell by my rankings before, I wasn't that into Halloween's 3 through 6. So just going back and building on really strong foundations of 1 and 2. Great strategy right off the bat. What do you think about that, Elizabeth?
I agree with that completely. So we've got a woman 20 years later who's dealing with the trouble, because Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, I mean, Halloween 2 picks up the same night Halloween 1 ends, right? So it's the same group of hours. What is it, like 24 hours to 36 hours is the first and second movies, and then this is 20 years later. So this is what happens when you go through that as a 17-year-old, when you watch your friends die and you find out that this maniacal silent stalking killer is your brother and he just keeps on not dying. 20 years later, you've changed your name, you faked your death, you're the headmistress of an elite private school, and your demons are still haunting you.
That's a big part of the theme of this movie, though, is confronting your fear. And that's interesting that I don't want to talk about too much. The 2018 movie is going to go a similar route, but do you like the fact that Laurie kind of has a transformation in this movie, Chad?
Yeah, I feel like she's the same character, to be perfectly honest. She's just traumatized a little bit from the events of 1 and 2, but I don't know that I really see the arc of confronting her fear.
Really?
So, yeah,
I think she's petrified. Like, she's living in absolute fear. She's changed her name. She's given her whole life up. She's basically walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
And by the
but she's also prepared.
Well, I mean, her son's threatened, and that kicks in the killer instinct.
Yeah.
So, kind of the protective instinct.
She loves something more than she fears Michael, you know?
That's well put. Yeah.
Yep. But they did think, to your earlier question, they did think about including 4 in this movie. There were originally going to be newspaper clippings that highlighted some of the things that happened in 4, but they were ultimately cut.
Well, I like 4 more than some of the other ones in between, but I'm so glad they cut it.
I wish they had cut 2, to be honest.
No.
I would rather get the familial relationship out of this as well. Like, I don't want her being his sister.
Oh, okay.
That was my big beef with it. I mean, if I could have the biggest beef with the Rob Zombie ones, was that was played up so much. That was like the point of the Rob Zombie films, was the familial relationship, and I think it was to give bless her heart, Sherry Moon Zombie, a bigger role. But
as always.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least he's loyal, right? But I do feel like, I mean, she's 20 years older too, so there's a way that a 37-year-old woman is going to approach a situation that's different than the way a 17-year-old approaches a situation, right? So she's in charge. She's in charge of this school. She's in charge of this 17-year-old son that she has. She's responsible, or at least she's trying to be. And the way she approaches it, that's the scene that I keep talking about. She gets John and Molly out of there. She breaks the gate so nobody can get in or out. She kicks the glass to get to the emergency axe, and she walks up the hill screaming, "Michael."
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel like the 17-year-old Laurie Strode was really capable of that.
Not at all. In fact, she just went like banging on the doors hysterically, like, "Let me in!"
Yeah.
And the neighbors weren't home.
Right, and that's the scene that, like, I get tears in my eyes and I get chills every single time. For some reason, I emotionally connect to that in a way that is probably really stupid and inappropriate, but I love that. That is just, well, and you know, the classic John Carpenter music starts playing, and it's a Halloween movie like you've never seen before in that moment, because it's game on and Laurie's coming for him, and that's just so cool to me.
Something that you see from a lot of horror movies at this era is there are references to the horror genre. In this movie in particular has a lot of references to Scream as well as other horror movies, but also to the original 78 Halloween movie. And I think one of the coolest examples of this is the classroom scene, which is reminiscent of the classroom scene from the 70s movie where Laurie is being in an English class and she's being viewed by Michael on the outside looking into her classroom. And it's a really creepy scene. And here we have Jamie Lee Curtis's character, Laurie, teaching a class, and this time Michelle Williams' character is responding to it, and there's a foreshadowing element to that. I really like this scene. I think it's one of the cooler scenes, certainly in this part of the movie. It gets off to a little bit of a slow start, but Elizabeth, what do you think? What's your take on this scene?
This really interesting scene, because she's obviously the English teacher too, because why wouldn't she be? And all the kids are in class, and she's teaching Frankenstein. She's trying to get them to talk about Victor confronting his monster. She gets Molly, that's Michelle Williams' character's name. She gets Molly to talk about Victor Frankenstein and him confronting his monster. And Molly says he's completely responsible for Elizabeth's death because he was so paralyzed by fear that he never did anything. It took death for the guy to get a clue. So then Laurie asks how Victor was able to confront the monster, and Molly says Victor had reached a point in his life where he had nothing left to lose. I mean, the monster saw to that by killing off everyone that he loved. Victor finally had to face it. It was about redemption. It was his fate, which is super interesting and foreshadowy, right? Because the scene that I love so much is when Laurie decides to confront Michael. It's not about her running. It's about her getting her son safe. It's about her confronting her monster. She might not have created her monster, but what I love so much about H2O is that Laurie decides she's not going to take it anymore. 1 and 2 are a fight for survival, and it's a wonderful display of fear and tenacity.
Well put, and all of that is certainly true. Let's get into the cast here a little bit. Chad, why don't you introduce who's who in the cast for us?
Sure. So we have Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays Carrie Tate, the headmistress of Hillcrest Academy. This is actually Laurie Strode. She had been in hiding. Unfortunately, the younger generation probably knows her as the Activia yogurt lady.
No, she's the scream queen.
Oh, come on.
No.
She is.
But might know her from Freaky Friday or True Lies as well. Yes, she is the Scream Queen.
She was awesome in True Lies.
Yeah.
We have Adam Arkin, who plays Will Brennan. He's Hillcrest's guidance counselor. Dr. Aaron Schutt on Chicago Hope. So we've got
Also son of Alan Arkin.
Yes. Yep.
Not nearly as good as his dad.
Not nearly.
Would have been super awkward if it was his dad, though.
But funnier.
We have Michelle Williams, who's Molly Cartwell. That's John Tate's girlfriend. She is Jen from Dawson's Creek, one of the teen heartthrob type things going on. We've got Adam Hann-Byrd, who is Charlie Devereaux. That's John Tate's friend. He's the young Alan Parrish in Jumanji.
He's kind of a preppy friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he's wacky. He's wacky.
I guess.
He's wacky.
Jodi Lynn O'Keefe. She plays Sarah Wainthrope. That's Charlie's girlfriend. She's Cassidy Bridges from Nash Bridges. I actually knew her from a more recent, small cameo role. She was a pretty memorable prostitute in The Big Bang Theory. She wound up faking a Jewish accent and everything. It was a lot of fun.
Interesting.
Janet Leigh, who is Norma Watson. That's Carrie Tate's secretary.
Mrs. Scream Queen.
Yes, she is Marion from Psycho, and we'll get to
That's a delightful cameo.
We'll get to those connections, I'm sure. Josh Hartnett, mentioned this is his big role. He's John Tate, Laurie's son. Zeke from The Faculty, the same year. Hugo from O, Slevin from Lucky Number Slevin. LL Cool J, he plays Ronald Ronnie Jones, who's the security guard writing erotic novels on company time. You'll know LL Cool J from Mama Said Knock You Out. He's Preacher from Deep Blue Sea, or Sam Hanna if you're my wife and watch NCIS Los Angeles.
More than just your wife watched that show, but yes.
Yeah, it is obscenely popular.
I never don't like LL Cool J in a role, incidentally.
And Chris Duran, he plays Michael Myers. He's just a Hollywood stuntman, so he's been involved in a lot of things.
Oh, yeah, given some... That's a deep cut. I didn't take note of that one. So Jamie Lee Curtis has played Laurie Strode in films that released in 5 different decades, which is kind of fun. She's in the 70s, Carpenter Halloween. She's in Halloween 2. And in the 2010s, she's in Halloween H2O here as well. Halloween Resurrection.
Heavy sigh, heavy sigh.
But she's been doing Laurie Strode for 5 decades, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
She keeps coming back to it, even though I got the feeling that this movie kind of felt like it would be the last.
I don't know. Did you watch after the credits?
I did. I usually do, but I'm not sure I did this time.
2018, I sat in the theater until the very bitter end, and right after the credits, you hear him breathe.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
Well, there's already a sequel in the works.
I didn't know this either. So
Yeah.
they
announced it.
They're going to name it Halloween 2020?
I think it's Revenge or something like that.
We've already had one of those.
I know.
The Revenge
We can
again?
have another.
The re-revenge.
But according to now, that revenge didn't happen. So
We now have 3 movies in the series that are called Halloween.
Can we put another colon in it and say, like, 40 years later or whatever? What are we up to now? I'm not going to do the math right now.
It's less fun when it's Halloween H20.
There you go. I cannot wait until they have geriatric people in like a it's going to be reminiscent of Halloween 2, like when they're in the hospital, but they're going to be in a retirement home, and she's going to have a walker.
Well, what about Michael? I mean, doesn't he get old?
That's true, and he'll have a scooter.
Yeah, he's got a cane shaped like a kitchen knife.
Yeah,
or with a kitchen knife on the end.
And she'll have like the tennis balls like on the bottom feet of her walker. So it's coming. Don't say it, and don't act like you won't want to see it when it happens.
Oh, I'll be first. It's opening night in the theater.
Jamie Lee Curtis admitted that she only did the movie for a paycheck, which is something Elizabeth had alluded to earlier, stating that it was but with the best intentions. It ended up coming back to it. The film had some good things in it about alcoholism and trauma, but in the end, she kind of just did it for the money. So, and it did make money. It turned a lot of profit.
Yeah. I mean, horror movies as a whole, as long as they're half decent, will turn a good profit. And especially a storied franchise like this.
Well, the cast that you're talking about here seems a little heavy, but like you mentioned, Hartnett, they get him early. Michelle Williams goes on to be a much bigger name later. LL Cool J sounds bigger because he's a musician, but as an actor, I don't know how hard he was to attain. I mean,
no.
I don't know that his catalog of works is... Like I said, I think as an actor, he's attainable.
Do not underestimate the staying power of Deep Blue Sea. Okay.
I've underestimated Roll Bounce.
I'll accept that. But Deep Blue Sea, shark movie, if it's on TV, I'll watch it. Let's just say that. That and The Fifth Element. There are two of those that if it's on, I'll watch it every time.
Even though this is Hartnett's first movie, he claims that he wasn't even interested in doing it until he found out Jamie Lee Curtis came back and was involved. So when it was just going to be Halloween 7, and it was literally going straight to video, Hartnett was thinking, I haven't been in a movie yet, but no thanks.
Like I said, all those other major franchises, they just weren't doing very well.
I don't think the 90s was that big for horror in general. I don't think there were as many of them. Yeah. I mean, especially if you get out of like the early 90s, you've got Child's Play and Candyman, and again, some of those other franchises that you mentioned are still churning out some late things, but by the late 90s, Scream is kind of a lighthouse.
Well, yeah, the first Scream was 96, right? And it was already a riff on existing horror movies. So yeah. It's turning horror movies on their ear. But then in 99, that's when the found footage stuff started. So that was with the Blair Witch Project.
Yes.
So that was sort of like the new horror was the found footage stuff.
That's actually a pretty good point. I've always equated it to The Grudge and The Ring kind of turning things around, but you're probably right. I think the Blair Witch Project came before those, and maybe that was a sea change for horror at that point.
Yeah, because the slashers stopped with Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yes.
Those were both out around the same time.
Yeah, that was very much like derivative of Scream as well.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to be Scream at this point, I think.
It was the last hurrah.
That's fair. Somebody who I love because she's in Rock and Roll High School and Stripes. PJ Souls was in the original Halloween movie. She's not necessarily the most pleasant character in that movie, but she was originally approached for the role of Katie Tate, which is Laurie Strode's secretary, even though she didn't make it out of the first movie. And so Souls never gave them a straight answer of what to do, and so she didn't get back in the movie. So, but they tried to go back there, and we'll get into this later. There's a lot of callbacks to other things, but there was the potential to bring PJ Souls back into this. I think it's kind of sad they didn't get her back in.
Oh, yeah.
I really think that it was special to have Janet Leigh as Norma, though. I think that was really, really special.
Yes.
So I'm kind of glad.
It's her first role in 18 years.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and wasn't her last one also in a Jamie Lee Curtis? Wasn't it what was it?
The Fog.
Yeah, The Fog. So, yeah.
1980. That's also John Carpenter, yeah.
Yeah, I think for those that aren't in the know, this is her mother.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't mentioned that.
Yeah, we okay, so yes, I feel bad about it. Thank you for setting the record straight on that. Yeah, so Janet Leigh, super famous for Psycho.
Yes.
And her daughter goes on to be Jamie Lee Curtis, who's super well known for Halloween. So I don't know if Jamie Lee Curtis has a daughter or not, but keep an eye out for whatever great horror movie that she's in, because Halloween and Psycho are up there.
Yeah. Although Jamie Lee Curtis has said she doesn't like horror movies.
She has said that. Ironic, though.
That scene with Janet Leigh was really sweet, though. I thought that was just a really nice little. It was a nicely little packaged scene. I mean, Normie even says, "Allow me to be maternal," or "I'm feeling maternal," or "I feel maternal towards you," or something like that. Which is, and the car is actually the car from Psycho.
Oh yeah.
Oh, everything
The
she did was a tip of the hat.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was pitch perfect.
And I was going to save this one for later, but since we're on it now, she also says, everybody's entitled to one good scare on Halloween.
Yeah.
And so...
Throwback to the first movie.
Which is totally what Annie's dad, the sheriff...
Yep,
and
Brackett.
Sheriff Brackett says. More memorable in that context, but this was a nice little throwback.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they went hugely heavy-handed. There's sampling of Psycho's movie. She mentioned that the showers are broken, and so... famous shower scene.
Oh, yeah. I didn't catch that one.
Yeah, yeah. So they have a lot of they went heavy on the Psycho illusions.
You're right. She's not even in this movie that much, but everything she does is like a tip of the hat to
Yeah.
love letter to other
scene.
horror things.
Yeah, it's just that one scene pretty much, but they load it up, and I loved it. I thought it just the thicker that they slapped it on, the better for that. I thought that was great.
The sampling of the Psycho theme was a good touch.
And I think one thing that I wish we could have had, but unfortunately he's not, Donald Pleasance isn't around. There's no Loomis this time around, so when the credits are running the prologue of the film about Michael's incarceration, instead of recovering old audio from the original scene of the movies, they actually just got a guy who sounded like Loomis. Fooled me when I first saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I read. And he did his very, very best Donald Pleasance. I wasn't fooled, but that's because I'm a complete geek. But I think he did a really good job.
So Tom Kane, I guess, was the name of the actor. I have his name here, but I didn't realize that he would go on to do Powderpuff Girls, Kim Possible, The Wild Thornberrys, Clone Wars. Wow, he's all over the voice work here.
He's Yoda.
Angry Beavers.
Yoda from Clone Wars.
Knight Rider. Wow, he's got a nice filmography there. So good work there, Tom Kane. Let's talk about the creation of this movie, though. The original one, as we mentioned before, was Halloween 7. It was planned to go to direct video after a modest box office performance of 6. And it had Robert Zeppia was the guy who was going to do it. And his original script was set in a fenced-in boarding school, but which this film keeps. However, Jamie Lee Curtis expressed interest in doing the film, and Kevin Witherspoon, who was coming off of the success of Scream, because we're already talking about the Scream connections of '96, was asked to come in by Dimension Films to do the creation for the next Halloween movie. So the creator of Scream, Zeppia, was offered more money to share the writing credit, but in the end he declined, and Witherspoon is the only possessor of the executive producer on the credit of the film. And so at this point, let's talk about it. We talked about how big Scream was. Elizabeth, where do you see the influences at the time and horror, as particularly in this movie, from Scream?
Well, other than the obvious, I mean, Molly and Sarah are watching Scream when they're getting ready for the bed check before they can go meet their boyfriends. I mean, that's a pretty obvious. Hello, we're gonna show Scream in this movie, and there's a little shout out when Laurie tells Molly to take John to the Beckett's. That's a riff on the first movie, like go down the street to the Mackenzie house. But Beckett was Drew Barrymore's character's last name in the first Scream movie.
Wow.
Too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's really detailed. Chad, I mean, stylistically though, this feels like it's akin to Scream, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's referential. It references Psycho quite a bit. There's even some mocking of itself. In the beginning with the cops when they're talking about Michael Myers, and they're like, yeah, right, wouldn't he be 60 years old or whatever it is, a ridiculous age, and they're just all down on it, kind of acknowledging some of the critics of saying, he's too old to be a serial killer at this point or a threat. And so there's a lot of self-awareness in this movie that I think Scream is famous for.
I agree. And it also aesthetically has a feel too, like the lighting is not very dark. Strong presence of soundtrack.
Very confined to home space.
Very focused on teenager life at this point. Like the original one was, but I feel like this one. Do you ever watch a movie in the late '90s and feel like I'm being marketed a certain lifestyle or like a certain like these are kids that you should be like? I feel like this is very forceful with that, and I feel like Scream did it more organically, and I felt this one was more conscious of, like, let's be like Scream.
You start waiting for the Dawson's Creek theme to come in.
Yes.
I don't want to wait.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so another fun connection here is director Steve Miner is also the director from Friday the 13th, Part 2 and Part 3 from 1981 and 82. Chad's shaking his head. Explain why.
I mean, between Freeman, the producer, which is Halloween, Curse of Michael Myers, and Resurrection in this movie, and Friday the 13th, Part 3, and Lake Placid, it's like you've gathered this... just don't.
Did you like the movie Big Bully any better then?
No.
Because he did that too.
I mean, Friday the 13th Part 2 established Jason as the actual killer. Spoiler for those that haven't seen Friday the 13th series, but that was important. But he doesn't have his mask. He has the hood and everything. It's just Halloween, or Friday the 13th Part 3 actually does give him his mask, so I will give Steve Miner that.
I like horror movies, but not like you guys do, so don't get mad at me when I say this, but I don't like the Friday the 13th series at all. I don't think it's very good.
That's fun.
Okay.
It's not my favorite. I mean, Halloween's my favorite by a long shot, but Friday the 13th, that's not one that I watch, like, every year. I don't know what it says about me that I watch most of the Halloween movies every year, but...
I've only watched the first 3, and
They get better. I like 4...
Do they?
2, 4, and 6 are good.
Two's generally considered the pinnacle.
For me, it's probably 4.
Okay.
And 6 is good too.
I'll get there eventually. And I watched that remake as well, which was good. I actually enjoyed that.
Yeah, 2009's Friday the 13th is the...
John Carpenter was originally in the running to be the director here, and he wanted to reunite the cast and crew of the original and have an active involvement in it. It was believed that Carpenter opted out, though, because he wanted no active part in the sequel, however. But in the other case, Carpenter agreed to direct the movie, but it was his fee that broke things down. He wanted $10 million as director. Carpenter rationalized this by believing that a hefty fee and compensation was in line for the revenue that he never received from the original Halloween movie. He was pretty sore that even though that movie was made on a shoestring budget and turned a huge profit, he felt like there was, whether it be contracts or whatever, he wasn't compensated adequately out of the big success that this would later go on to become. He and Mustafa Akid, who's kind of the keeper of the Halloween franchise, didn't have the best relationships, and so Akid balked when Carpenter's fee came his way, and they just moved on, which I think is so sad. Wouldn't it be cool to get John Carpenter back?
Well, he also asked for a 3-movie deal.
Give it to him!
I don't think Jamie Lee Curtis wanted 3 movies, though.
Well, after you saw Halloween Resurrection, I bet everybody sat there and wished we would pay John Carpenter.
Oh, boy. Yeah, Resurrections. I mean, I guess we're going to have to go into Resurrection a little bit. Maybe we don't. No, maybe we don't.
We can just say it's not what we want it to be.
It's not what I wanted it to be. And then even after Laurie's not in it anymore, and that is resolved in the really unsatisfying way it's resolved, that was not okay. It was not okay.
So as we mentioned here, Steve Miner, this is probably, I think it's safe to say, I haven't seen all of his movies, but I think this is probably his best movie. And John Carpenter can probably direct circles around him.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
I mean, John Carpenter's a hit and miss. We've discussed this in the Halloween podcast. He's hit and miss with his franchises, but he knows how to create tension. He knows how to use scores. He wrote the original Halloween theme.
I think he's more hit than miss, for sure. But when he gets it right, he really gets it right. So, and yeah, you're right. Like, Children of the Damned was a miss, for instance. But, I mean, for every one of those, he's got, like, They Live and...
Well, what was it? You give him $25 million, he'll make $100 million. You give him $100 million, he'll make $25 million.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that one of the things that, if I have complaints about H2O, back to your earlier question about what are some similarities to the actual style of Scream, there were the fake jumps where, oh, there's something bad. No, it's not. No, it's not bad. It's okay. Where a character is startled, and that happens a lot in Scream, and it happens a lot in H2O, in that hour in between Nurse Marion getting killed and then the actual action when Michael gets to the school. There's a lot of startled characters. There are a lot of fake jumps.
Yes.
And I feel like John Carpenter doesn't do that, and I actually feel like it doesn't add to the tension in a good way. I feel like it takes away from the tension.
I second, third, and fourth all of those points, 100%.
Yeah, I was counting them. There are 6. There are 6 fake outs.
I'll be honest with you, if you just...
You counted them?
Yes.
I love that about you.
I feel like there were more, but I trust you. 6 is a lot for that small window of time, too. So
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, again, you talk about Friday the 13th feels, because Friday the 13th, the third one I think it is absolutely jam-packed full of jump scares. I remember in the first half an hour of that, it was just like, there have to be at least 12 of these. Nothing actually is sinister in this movie. It's just scary. I feel like it's like, in a world where things aren't as scary as you think they are, you turn on the light and it was just an ironing board.
Yeah, they have their time and place. I still like It Follows. There's a bird that hits the window or something like that.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you brought that up.
It relieves tension and you laugh, and it's like, it breaks the ice, but they don't abuse it.
That was a gorgeous film.
LL Cool J gets all the laughs I need in this movie. You don't like LL Cool J?
I want to hate the whole him writing erotica and reading it to his wife or girlfriend or whoever she is on the phone. I want to hate all of that. I like LL Cool J. He can do no wrong.
I felt like it was awful the first time I saw it, maybe even the second time I saw it, but when I returned to it this time, I kind of came in with just a whole different attitude. And I don't think I want this in a Halloween movie, but it's there, and I kind of came to it differently this time. It's just like, I knew it was coming, and I steered into it more, and for some reason it went down for me better. Am I wrong? Chad's looking at me like I'm crazy on this one.
I mean, it's written in such a way that it's not even trying to be good. It's just ludicrous dialogue where he's just absurdly describing a woman. But I don't know. I don't want this type of comic relief in my horror movies.
Too funny?
Yeah, it's too goofy. It's too corny.
It does feel a little bit like the 40-year-old version where Steve Carell's at the poker game and they ask him, like, what were the breasts like? And he's like a bag of sand.
Oh, he does better than that. Come on. And I feel like it was kind of clever because whoever's trying to explain their reasoning for putting elements into this movie can say, well, I mean, that's Ronnie's character, right? So it's not actually a thing that happens that's comic relief. It's not actually a slapstick, funny, ridiculous thing that happens. It's just this particular quirk of the guy who runs the front gate, and it just so happens that it's a boring job, and he writes erotica and calls and reads it to his wife. And so it's almost like a story within a story rather than actual action in the plot. It's just a characteristic of one of the characters, and that's sort of a cheat, I guess. But it worked for me this time, actually, better than it's worked any other time, in that I thought it's not that funny, but it shows that there are characters who have no idea the horrors that are lurking out there, right?
It's better than the cops from Halloween 5 that like have the tuba playing as they walk around telling bump, 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 bump.
You were
I
so
almost feel
hard
like that
on
was a
scene.
dare. I almost feel like
It
that
was
a
more than
dare.
one scene. It was just awful. I was like, why don't these cops have clown shoes on? Just go ahead and give them clown shoes.
We got a really good job. We got a really good deal on tuba players.
I guarantee you his contract says I can't die in this movie, though.
When Kevin Williamson first outlined Halloween H20, he created a storyline in which Laurie Strode was faked her own death and then taken a new identity as a specific way of reconnecting a character to the death of Halloween 4. The producers ultimately decided to go away from that, though, and they cut a piece in the opening scene credits where there was some newspaper clipping articles, which I think Chad was kind of alluding to earlier. So
Yeah, it still mentioned her car wreck, though.
did it?
Yeah, it was. There was still a shot of that.
Okay, so there is at least some haphazard attempt to at least gloss over it. So, and then Jamie Lee Curtis originally wanted Laurie's life to be in shambles at the start of this movie. She's fragile, but she's not broken like Laurie wanted her to be. She wanted Kevin Williamson to make her unstable and unhinged and, you know, again, over the edge, alcoholic. And so Kevin Williamson, though, convinced her that Laurie should have more to lose than that, and therefore the stakes will be higher. Those are two interesting points, because I think what they did in Halloween 2018 actually is more like what Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to do. And is Kevin Williamson right here, or do you like Jamie Lee Curtis's stance on this one, Elizabeth?
Oh, I think that Kevin Williamson was spot on. I feel like H2O works because Laurie has this tenuous hold on life. She's obviously keeping it together enough to run this really expensive private school she's obviously inside a shambles, right? So I think he managed to achieve that within the character, but on the outside she's got this brittle exterior where she's barely holding it together, but she's at least holding it together enough to do her job.
Yeah.
And she's raised this kid in a way that's made him resent her, obviously, but he loves her and he's protective of her. So she's done something right in all this. We got what Jamie Lee wanted in the 2018, which was great, but I really enjoyed the tension of this very, very tightly wound Laurie Strode being Carrie Tate on Halloween. Give me one day when really it's every day. She's an absolute complete basket case, just with a smooth, well-groomed shell, veneer covering it.
I felt like her son, which granted a teenage son can be kind of a jerk sometimes and selfish, but I really, every time I watch this movie, I hate Josh Hartnett more and more. Not him, but like his character more and more, because like his mom's having a really hard time at like this super traumatic thing that happened to her, and he's just like, oh, Mom, again, with the whole like attempted murder thing. It's like, yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
I mean, for 17 or 18 years of his life, nothing has happened. So it's probably reasonable at that point to be like, Mom, you need to let it go.
Yeah.
But it worked on the clock. Like, there was something special about Halloween. Like, he came back on Halloween. So, like, there is something critical about that. And, like, you're in witness protection. Like, if he doesn't know that you've grown up in witness protection, that there's a really bad man who kills people who could come at you at any second, and your existence thrives in the fact that it's a kept secret, that you know where, like, that he doesn't know where you are. I mean, come on. You got to be a little bit nice to your mom.
Well, when they have the confrontation in town, when he and Charlie have snuck out to go get booze for their secret Halloween party, and she's sucked down 2 glasses of Chardonnay at lunch, and she's feeling a little loose and a little crazy, and she sees him, and they have that confrontation on the street. He says Michael Myers is dead. I mean, he obviously doesn't think there's a bad man coming to get them. He thinks that Mom had a bad time, and he's been real patient all this time. And now he's 17 years old, darn it, and he's got to live his life. He can't live his life for her anymore. That's what he says to her. So I feel like, I mean, and at the beginning, our introduction to them, she wakes up screaming, and he runs in and comforts her and gives her medicine. So he's an abnormally, I think, conscientious and thoughtful 17-year-old kid who is aware of the fact that his mom has had a hard time and is suffering through, they don't call out PTSD, but that's obviously what she's got. But he loses patience because she is unrelenting in her rigidity, and he just has a hard time reconciling that. I found myself watching a lot more sympathetic to his character than I've ever been in the past.
Okay, well, okay, so that's an opposite take then. I every time I see it, I just go like, man, this guy's a jerk. Even if you're a teenager, I mean, your mom's going to pieces. You got to be a little bit nice to her.
Nope, reasonable.
Reasonable? Okay.
Yeah. Bad haircut, but reasonable.
Totally bad haircut, right?
Everyone keeps telling him that throughout the comb your hair.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. His friends and this school, I don't quite understand. I don't need the whole backstory, but what kind of school is this?
It's just like a prep school.
Like,
yeah.
Do people go live in these schools?
Yeah.
They're
like
private schools that
yeah.
people with a lot more money than we had growing up go to.
Yeah.
When people say I'm going to send you to boarding school, I get like the notion of like this is where troubled youths get sent, and like they're in this crappy like in this like halfway army camp. Like, I'm sending you to boarding school, like in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. Like, I'm going to send you to boarding school, Ted.
No, this is like where our Supreme Court justices go.
Okay. Yeah, rich. You have better advantages for college. It's just like Chad said.
Well, you can tell I didn't grow up in that world, apparently. So.
No, neither did I.
No.
Neither did I, but I watch a lot of movies.
I wasn't there. I was like, is this college or what is happening? Is this like Oxford or like? No, it's Southern California, but I don't.
This is what rich people do when they don't want to go to the bad public schools.
Okay. Well, I guess that's why the city schools are the way they are here.
Can we talk for a minute about why Michael Myers can drive?
Sure. Yeah. I have a theory on this, but
I love this though.
Yeah. Go ahead. What's your take on this one, Elizabeth?
I don't have a take. I mean, it's been blogged about, and it's something that I just, because even in the first movie, right? They're driving into. Is that the first movie? Where
he's driving around.
Yeah, he's been in an institution since he was 6 years old, and he stabbed Judith to death, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Who taught that guy to drive? He doesn't talk.
I've seen speculation on this one. I think actually it was last year when we did this on the Halloween episode 4 for the show. In that, I remember somebody saying that Loomis driving him around as his doctor, he would be in the car and you watch, just like you watch your parents how to drive, you get the idea that, you put the gas pedal down, you put the brake on, you turn. Yep. Is it that hard? I mean...
Well, he's supposed to be somewhat intelligent and hyper-observant. He's just a psychopath. But I love that he's the only horror villain that I can think of, other than maybe the creeper from Jeepers Creepers, that drives.
The leprechaun. He has a little car that...
Wow, okay.
Well,
that's a deep cut.
But... I didn't think that Loomis drove him around so much. I mean, I feel like Loomis went to go see him. But so all that aside, let's say that he learned, like, the basics of how to operate a motor vehicle. He steals the car in Illinois, right? And then drives all the way to California in H20. That's a really, really long way. I mean, he had to stop for gas.
I feel like there's a whole nother in-between movie. Like, how, like, Rogue One, like, is an in-between story of Star Wars?
It's Michael Myers' drive from Illinois to California to go kill Laurie in Halloween H20.
Yeah, like a murder... join him on a murder spree across the country.
What I didn't need, though, is the scene with him swapping cars. Like, he changes out cars.
Well, that's reminiscent of the first movie, too. Because he takes, like, the therapist's car, which they're looking for in that movie. Like, they're gonna be looking for that car. And he kills, like, a repairman, which is obviously where he gets his that's
his
where
coveralls,
Yeah. And so that one's a little more tight, but I thought the car switch in this movie was just straight up a tip of the hat to that first movie.
What was that one that he stole outside the restaurant? Was it like a green Buick of some kind?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I might have the two cars that you were asking about. Yes, the one at the beginning of the house is a 71 Buick Skylark, and Laurie and Carrie's car is a 1998 GMC Jimmy SLT. So there you go. They're the cars of Halloween H20.
Yeah,
thank you. I feel better. No, but seriously, that flummoxes me how he got from Illinois, where he killed Nurse Marion and all that jazz, and switched out cars and got his overalls and got his mask, and we'll talk about the mask too. But then he makes it all the way to California. So I'm very curious, did he siphon gas? Did he actually steal a credit card, or did he pay cash?
I like to think that he went in to pay inside and then killed the guy, like prepay style.
But then they would be looking for him, So and it would probably be on the news. White masked guy looks like Michael Myers killing gas station attendant, stealing corn nuts. I mean,
there's a large amount of incompetence around the police in this series. So
all police have tubas playing behind them in clown shoes. So one thing I'm going to pick on director Steve Miner just a little bit more is his camera work is nowhere near. I wish he had just copied Carpenter a little bit more. Please get the first person camera moving slowly, as if I'm walking and pursuing you back. The whole I'm pursuing you and you're in the predator's perspective point of view. It's so much scarier when someone's being watched and they don't know it and you're approaching them. Think about on the drive, she thinks that Michael Myers is coming her way, and from a mile away, and it's not very intense. In fact, it ends up being one of those fake jump scares where it wasn't real. Again, think about what John Carpenter would have done. He would have had Michael looking and seeing her waiting, is this the right time for a kill? I can do better. That's really scary. And this movie doesn't do that. I wish it had.
That was one of my big criticisms with 2018 is they misused that first person to show him doing mundane things like walking through that house and observing the baby and walking on and picking the knife. Use that well.
Okay.
I think the whole point of that scene, that particular moment in 2018, was just to make you wonder if he was going to kill the baby.
He should have killed the baby.
Oh, he should have killed the baby. Don't kill the baby.
No.
He's the shape of evil. Kill the baby.
No.
He is the shape of evil, but what would be the point? He might be able to turn the baby evil. I don't know. It's not worth the energy to kill the baby.
This is going to go out there on the internet forever. Chad
It'll bring
Robinson
in heat.
says, should have killed the baby.
No, don't do that. Don't kill kids in movies.
Should have killed LL Cool J in the booth. Should have killed the baby in 2018.
I am surprised LL Cool J is like, I'm okay now.
Well, that was a weird, the being shot, that was a Black Knight kind of, just a flesh wound. He's like, it was just a scratch. But
he looked really dead when he got shot the first time.
Oh boy, did he ever!
But
I mean, she's crying, and then the boyfriend, Arkin. That's a particularly great Michael Myers kill, I think, because it's just one stab and then the lift and the shake.
That's probably one of his trademarks, the stab lift.
It was just so unlike him to leave a threat alone, and he passes LL Cool J in that guard booth during yet another fake out series, and it's just like, kill him.
Maybe he wanted to hear the story ended.
Am I wrong in saying that the first Halloween actually doesn't have a particularly high kill count?
No.
But in this one might actually even be higher, but somehow it seems like we're going too long of a dry spell in this.
He only has 6 kills in this movie, and 3 of them are in the first scene.
Which, by the way, that first scene's awesome.
It was interesting. They made Marion kind of a force to be reckoned with. Like, she fought back better than almost all of his victims.
Mm-hmm.
She got a couple good blows in, too.
So, a subplot involving 2 detectives, one male, one female, were tracking Michael for the murder of Nurse Stevenson's was in the script, but they ended up completely cutting it out. Remnants of the characters actually still remain in the start of the movie when the 2 random detectives are talking in the home of Stevenson's home. Yeah. They're there. Those were supposed to be a bigger part of the movie, and I can see where there being room for more of that, to be honest with you, in here. This movie's only 86 minutes. It's the shortest of any Halloween movie. I wish Rob Zombie's movie were shorter.
They could have used those detectives instead of bringing LL Cool J back to life. And again, I think this was written into his contract. I cannot die.
I'm just disappointed nobody got LL. I know you don't like LL Cool J, but I'm a little bit disappointed nobody found his book and started reading it out loud. Like, what is this? I would like that.
I liked him, but I didn't want him to come back in the end. That felt cheap to me.
It did. Yeah, I agree with that. So, at one time, a plan for Michael Myers to speak a single line in the movie saying, "Laurie," just before he gets beheaded, and they dropped that from the final script.
Well, that would have ruined the beginning of Resurrection, right?
Yep.
But the beginning of Resurrection ruins the beginning of Resurrection. I don't want to spoil that movie right now, but so let's talk about this one we haven't gotten to yet. Killing Michael Myers. Big move. Elizabeth, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so that scene, which was totally ruined by the beginning of Resurrection, spoiler alert, but that scene, part of me, the critical part of me, thinks was totally lame. Because he's there and he's reaching out. There's like humanity or desperation, or there's at least a lizard brain, help me. And that's more emotion than we ever see from the Shape, right? The Shape is not a man. The Shape is he's evil incarnate. He doesn't have a help me, like, gene in him, right? But he's trapped up against that tree. And there's this moment where she's looking at him and he's looking through his mask holes, and he reaches out and they almost touch fingers, and then she huffs that axe she stole up and she chops its head off. So the critical part of me says that's just awful. The part of me that is an emotional creature who loves this franchise, I love that so much. I just think that was such an interesting choice, and I think it makes the beginning of Resurrection make sense. Because the Shape probably wouldn't reach out to her, but a guy who had his tongue cut out and gotten his clothes swapped and had a mask put on him would. That's what makes me mad at the beginning of Resurrection, because it does make sense, because that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Michael to reach out and almost touch fingers with her.
You got to be really sure that you want to wrap this thing up here, and clearly they didn't in the end. I mean, I think I've seen an interview where Mustafa Akid said, you can't kill Michael Myers. It's like in the contract. And I'm like, yeah. I mean,
Wouldn't you take his mask off? I mean, if you're Laurie, wouldn't you take his mask off? No?
I think it would.
Tell me more.
It would make him... It'd restore some humanity to him.
He actually gets his mask pulled off briefly in the first movie, and he puts his mask back on. Like, you don't get a good look at his face, though.
I think she kills him with the mask because that's the Shape of evil. Like... For the other 2 encounters, someone else has killed, and I'm using finger quotes here, Michael Myers for her. This is her doing it herself and she is just ending the evil. She doesn't need anything. She doesn't need a person attached to it.
Yeah. Let's talk about, Chad, you mentioned that the masks were different in this movie, and actually I never noticed it before, but once you start to see that there are certain masks in this, do you have any insights on that?
Oh yeah, there were 4 different masks used. The original mask was lost after Halloween 2, sadly, and this isn't one of the worst examples, I don't think, but there is a very, very bad scene where Charlie turns around to Michael Myers, and it is clearly a different mask.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes me out of the scene. Like, this is not how he should look. And I don't know why they didn't go back and fix that in post.
Yeah. Certain scenes Michael can be seen wearing, like the first one is from John Carl Butcher's, resembled the first one from Halloween 6. And the producers were not satisfied with that, so they called in Greg
Nicotero,
thank you. They called in Greg Nicotero to make a new mask for the filming. And they resumed with that second mask. Like you said, why would they not go back and reshoot the other stuff? But then, later on, Miner, the director, in his infinite wisdom, I'm going to continue piling on him.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, he decided well into the production to go with yet another mask. So certain scenes are reshot and other ones are not. And some scenes are with the original mask can be seen. And one had to be altered with CGI for a whole 4th mask. So, I mean, Elizabeth... Again, it probably takes somebody who's seen it as many times as you have. Is it okay, or does it kind of bother you?
It bothers me. The mask in 1 and 2 that's what the shape looks like. It was a Captain Kirk mask, right?
Yep.
That they painted white. And it's so eerie because it looks like a person's face, but it doesn't look like a person's face. And any deviation from that in subsequent films bugs me. I don't pick apart the actual differences or anything like that, but Michael Myers is supposed to look a certain way. And when he doesn't look the way he's supposed to look, then that ticks me off, because how hard is that, guys? You know?
Yeah, it's a mask. You just make a choice and you gotta you make a choice. So another thing that kind of bothered me was more so in kind of how they shaped these characters. It seemed like Sarah, the girlfriend of Charlie, she seems to go more to Josh Hartnett's character John more so. She's like this edgy, like, kind of, she seems more alternative in nature, and Josh Hartnett, with his uncombed hair and sulky kind of like offbeat attitude, I get that these two are outsiders, whereas Charlie just doesn't seem like he fits with them. Is that a fair statement?
They don't really give you a whole lot of backstory with their relationships or everything. I always just kind of assumed that Charlie and John have been friends since they were little kids. That Laurie's been Carrie since before John was born, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I guess they grew up in that little part of California, and Charlie maybe was like the little kid that got picked on or whatever. But also, John's mom is the boss, right? So as alternate as he wants to look, he's still the headmistress's son.
Yeah, and it is a private school. Like, I mean, the most he can do is like keep his tie slouchily done and stuff like that. And they do mention at one point that who's not going on this field trip, and they're like, oh, it's 4 outsiders.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm all for throwaway teenagers, but you almost needed more of them.
Yeah.
So you could kill more of them. But none of them had it.
Well, and if you're only going to give us 4, then give us a little more to get invested in.
Yeah,
that's where I am.
They had no development whatsoever.
That's what I am, and I'm left, and that's why I'm sitting here picking their wardrobe apart, because like I'm just like, well, this guy doesn't seem like he goes to that girl, and this guy seems too preppy to be in there. And you're right. If you had actually given me some taste of why these guys are friends or how they function as a group, or like show, like Charlie seems like he might be the kind of guy who steals test scores or something like that, and then helps these. I mean.
Give us something.
Give me something.
Yeah, there's usually some rule that they have to break to be deserving of their death. And other than skipping out on a field trip, which seems pretty minor, like, you've got to have the...
They don't even have a chance to drink.
Yeah, they're not drinking, they're not having...
They're
drinking wine, too.
No, not yet. Not yet, though, because they're making food. And that's the first thing they do. Charlie and Sarah make the food. They take it down. They're like, oh, wait, we forgot the wine.
Nothing goes with wine, like fine wine like Salisbury steak from a cafeteria.
And meatloaf, yeah.
Yeah,
and then Charlie goes to find the corkscrew, drops it down the sink, has to dig it out, and that's when he gets killed. They don't even have a chance to take a sip of wine before...
I hated that scene, too, because they pulled some Final Destination stuff with that disposal, and then it just wasn't used. It's like, why are you wasting my time?
Yeah.
It was a throwaway. And then just like Russell pointed out, was it Russell that he turns and looks at Michael and says, "Hey," or something like that, and it doesn't even look like Michael. No. And then poor Charlie ends up in the dumbwaiter with his throat cut. And that's that particular scene with Sarah. Sarah sees the blood on the floor.
I did like
and then she's, oh gosh, there's Charlie. Charlie, wake up! Wait, his throat's cut. And Michael's coming after her, and she crawls into the dumbwaiter with him. That's a whole nice, harrowing, awful, terrible experience scene that I think is fitting to the genre and to the franchise. And another thing that gets me about Michael Myers, and I actually wrote a blog post for a site that I used to write for about Michael Myers as a funny guy, and it was based on the fact that he put on the sheet in one and put Bob's glasses on over the sheet.
Yeah.
You know.
That was a big criticism of ours in the podcast.
Yeah. And so in this one, he takes the time to hang Sarah from the light fixture in the kitchen, right?
Yeah, that is reminiscent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reminiscent in this movie. Perhaps too much, but yeah. What do you think about the soundtrack in this one? I thought it odd that there were ominous scores placed in times where there weren't. Like, the buses were just queuing up children, and like the music was like dun 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 dun. I'm like, like, why?
I literally wrote down in my notes, "This is not what the theme is for," in all caps, because at one point Laurie is just watching buses load, and the Halloween music is playing, then it cuts to her talking, and it stops playing, and then it resumes as Michael Myers is like driving a car off in the distance.
That's like watching a James Bond movie and having him open a file cabinet, and then like dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it was baffling. I don't think they used it correctly more than once in this movie, and it just...
It's the scene walking up the hill. That was correct.
Yeah.
That was 100% correct.
Man, I gotta give him credit though. I like Creed, What's This Life For? Although it's such a nice 90s movie where like you put a pop rock song like that, like into this thing. You would never do that now.
I would not recommend adding Creed to anything ever.
Oh, they were the thing back then. This was before everybody hated Creed. Like they were on the like everybody likes Creed.
Not everybody.
See, nobody's gonna admit that now. But like I'm gonna give you the Chris Rock line with the Spice Girls. Like Spice Girls sold millions and millions of records, but nobody admits to it. Somebody's buying it, and then their car going, "Tell me what you want. Tell me what I want."
I'm not buying it, but I'll listen to the Spice Girls. Creed sucks.
All right. Well, I'm gonna steer into my nostalgia for the time on that one. Just like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's Vans shoes and Creed, in the Creed soundtrack, I'm okay with all of this. The majority of John Ottman's original score was rejected late in post-production and replaced by Marco Beltrami's score to Scream from 1996 and Scream 2 in 97 and Mimic in 97. The producers wanted a darker, more Scream-like score, so again, they're just blatantly saying, like, can we make it more Scream-like?
They literally mixed in Scream's music.
Why would you do that?
Lazy?
Hey, it worked in 96.
Have I mentioned before this guy can't direct? So, we've covered so much, but Elizabeth, do you have any look for this moments?
Oh, well, we were talking about soundtrack, and when she gets into the car in town, and she's 2 glasses of Chardonnay in, and she's all mad at John, she turns on the radio, and it's Mr. Sandman.
Yes, that was a good callback.
That is a nice callback, too.
Great callback. And she angrily turns off the radio, which also seemed oddly like a Scream type moment for me too. That felt very modern horror.
Yeah,
very much so.
Chad, look for this.
Yeah, so we've mentioned that Scream 2 is playing on the TV, but the reason they chose Scream 2 and not Scream 1, Chris Duran, who is playing Michael Myers, not the Shape, but credited as Michael Myers, was the stuntman for Ghostface.
More Scream
overlap.
2. So much Scream overlap.
Yes.
Mine's going to be another tidbit that's really hidden in there. A statue of Butterball, the Cenobite from Hellraiser, can actually be seen on Jimmy's porch when the nurse knocks on his door.
Yes, that made me happy.
Oh, right. Yep. That was great.
Which is a strange thing to have on your porch, right?
Yeah.
Nothing says don't knock on my door like a Cenobite.
Well, it is Halloween.
Yeah, oh, that is a good point. But I mean, I still think Cenobite sounds like a delicious thing that you get at Pizza Hut for dessert.
Not if you watch Hellraiser movies enough.
That's true. So, time to hand out some awards. Elizabeth, are you ready? Who's your MVP of Halloween H20?
Jamie Lee. I know that's kind of that's a gimme, but Jamie Lee all the way. I love her.
It's a gimme for a reason. I'm with you. What about you, Chad?
Absolutely. She's the Scream Queen for a reason.
She reinvigorated the whole series by
Yes.
coming back and saying, let's do this again. And even if she did it for a payday, it had dividends to the point where we're still getting to enjoy it today. So I'm glad she did. Best Supporting Actor, Elizabeth.
I've got to go. Well, I love the cameo of Janet Leigh, and then for Best Supporting, I actually thought that Josh Hartnett did a great job.
Okay, yeah. And my co-host Brian, who's not here, would applaud you for that.
He absurdly loves Josh Hartnett.
Yeah. We have an ongoing thing where I don't like Hartnett, and he does, and we go back and forth on
I
that.
really, really do.
And Jed, who's your Best Supporting Actor?
Adam Arkin for me. I felt like he was the only other believable character, or at least just had personality in this.
Not all cool, huh? Okay. All right.
He was a caricature of himself.
My Best Supporting Actor, and I think that he was in it enough to give him Supporting Actor, was Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Jimmy Howell. That first scene, I was digging it.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like we lost him just a little too soon. I wish he were friends with the other guys in school.
Yeah, well, I have to jump to my hidden gem. I'm going to skip you, Elizabeth, skip out a turn. But yeah, he was my hidden gem.
Mine too.
Exactly what Russell had said. I wrote, I wanted more of Jimmy because Joseph Gordon-Levitt can actually act.
Yes, he's a good actor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's mine too.
Okay, so I guess that takes me then to my hidden gem would be Janet Leigh, which was your Best Supporting. So we're switching and swapping and mixing and matching. But
horror movies are always a small, tight-knit cast.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Elizabeth, if you had to recast somebody and put somebody in their place, who would it be, and who would you put in their place?
I gotta say Adam Arkin. I didn't like him at all. The stuff that was supposed to be disarmingly awkward to me was just awkward, and I didn't feel like he and Jamie Lee had much chemistry.
So are you putting Alan Arkin in his place?
No. But I would have liked to have seen John Cusack or somebody that cost too much, probably. But I would have liked to see somebody that had better on-screen chemistry with Jamie.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
How about Paul Giamatti? He's cheaper at this point.
Yeah.
Was he cheaper back then, though?
I think so.
I love Paul Giamatti, and it's because of the karaoke movie he did.
I could see him being a guidance counselor.
Duets? Did you guys see that? I mean, Andre Braugher singing karaoke, and Paul Giamatti,
No, but Jed, recast time for you, man.
I'm going after Michelle Williams. I really thought she brought absolutely nothing to her role.
She mumbled every line, too.
Yeah, if we have to go Dawson's Creek, go get Katie Holmes instead.
I think they wanted a moody character, but I don't think she knows how to play moody. I feel like...
she does now.
Yeah, that's...
Did you see Blue Valentine? I mean...
I didn't, actually, but... Okay, that's fair. But it looks like somebody who was told to play moody and can't, is what I'm saying.
She reminds me of a knockoff Renee Zellweger.
That's too harsh now. You, sir, have gone too far.
Across the line. I'm sorry, Miss Williams.
So I'm going to go with Adam Hann-Byrd, who plays Charlie Devereaux. You probably could detect me picking on this. He just doesn't fit. No part of him fits. I want somebody who's kind of got an alternative sense to them as well. Somebody who looks like would be an outsider. And I'm actually going to go out of the acting world and grab a musician at this point. Somebody like Max Collins from Eve 6 at the time. Okay. I could see him hanging out with these guys more. And also, Charlie looks like he's like the short kid who would get Shoved in a locker by Josh Hartnett. Max seems like somebody who would be age appropriate and hanging out with these guys. And I don't know. I believe that he would be worthy of having Sarah on his arm. So somebody cool like that. And that would also market the soundtrack more, which is all MTV is all about that at this point. Like they have total synergy with the studio.
Oh, good. So we could squeeze in "Here's to the Night We Felt Alive."
Wasn't out yet, but
it'd be better than Creed.
Yeah, it wasn't.
True.
It wasn't out yet, but I mean, you would have gotten maybe Leach, like sucking on my brain. You're the teacher and the student, turning things around. Your story's not congruent. No. No. All right. Moving on then.
Ross was like, "Who's coming with me?"
Yeah, I like the music from this era, and nobody else in this podcast does. That's okay.
I'm old is why. That's all. It's just I'm old.
All right. So best shot. As much as I've criticized Mr. Miner, it's time to just say what was Shane Miner's best shot. Elizabeth.
The walk up the hill.
Good one.
Very good.
Hands down. The best scene in the movie. Best scene in maybe any Halloween movie ever. One of my favorite things in all of the whole universe. I love that scene. Loved it.
What is your best shot?
He was played heavily in the trailers, but where Laurie and Michael first encounter each other and they're looking at through the porthole, and you see them react to each other, even with the mask on, there's a reaction from Jamie Lee Curtis, and it's just great.
That was the best tension in the movie too, by the way. That scene. So you nailed mine exactly. The porthole in the door where it's like just her face is framed well, and then it turns and his face is framed well too. So love it. Best scene, Elizabeth.
Again, the walk up the hill, or the scene with Janet Leigh. Either one.
Okay.
But the walk up the hill, I just can't say enough good things about the walk up the hill. And she screams Michael like several times, and it just echoes through the valleys of that part of rich California, and the abandoned school, and it's dark. It got dark really, really fast too. I don't know how it got dark that fast, but that's it. That makes the movie for me.
Yeah. Chad.
For me, it's Michael flipping over tables and chairs while Laurie's crawling away in the dining hall. I felt like this was the most menacing I'd seen Michael Myers in a long time. He's just this sheer brute strength and just a force.
Yeah. My best scene is going to be the opening scene with the woman coming home to a ransacked house. She has 2 teenage boys help keep her company while the police are on their way, and this just uses suspense so well. It's so promising for the start of the movie. I think that we're in for a whole nother level of movie, and we just don't know who lives and who dies. Nothing's predictable at this point. Great start to the movie. I only wish that it could have maintained this momentum going forward. So that's my best scene.
Yeah, that was a great opening kill scene.
Yep, absolutely. Change one thing, Elizabeth.
I would have liked a little more reverence to Nurse Marion. I would have liked a little more explanation to people not familiar with the franchise, because she's an important character to me. Like, even though she's a tertiary character, she's important. And like, I don't know, somehow Laurie finding out that she'd been killed, or after the fact or something like that, or there'd been like just at the very end like an obit or just something to mark that's the significance of that character would have been nice. Maybe a little bit more time with her at the beginning too, like not too much more time, but like
sure.
30 more seconds, 1 more minute.
Again, it's an 86-minute movie. There's time to do it. You have time to do that.
Right. Well, in the beginning when the kid asks her, don't you know that those things kill when she lights a cigarette, and she said, yeah, but they're all dead. You know, I mean, like she had more to give.
Yeah, I like the actress who played her too, by the way.
Oh yeah, great.
Chad, change one thing.
3 words. Pay John Carpenter.
Oh wow, that's great. I like that better than the one I have. I was trying to show restraint and like isolate it a little more, but nice. That I can't argue one bit with that. So for me, I'm gonna go with second quarter of the movie. There's a lot of jump scares in a long drought here. Please replace some of these copious amounts of jump scares with one thoughtful kill. Maybe we kill a gatekeeper or a security guard who's not LL Cool J. I need something just to remind us that there's danger on its way. But I love recast the director. Best quote of the movie, Elizabeth.
Adam Arkin has just gotten the bomb dropped on him that his girlfriend is actually Laurie Strode, and everything's happening all at once. And he asks her, "What do we do?" And she says, "Try not to die." And it's so like Die Hard 90s like action film kind of, but she just delivers it so well. It's just, other than her screaming Michael walking up the hill, which I will talk about until we're done. But yeah, that she just looks at him and says, "Try not to die." That's my favorite.
I love that entire scene. Even his initial kind of playful reaction of, "Well, that's terrible. Take off your clothes."
Because he thinks she's like, he thinks it's like foreplay. You know, he thinks she's like getting kind of freaky, and then he's like, "Wait a minute, you're serious?" Because it seems to me, because they're making out, and he's like, "Oh, really? Are we really?"
Yeah, how
really?
do you do that? Like that's really foreplay for a traumatized woman.
Yeah, that was a great scene. But yeah, try not to die.
Okay, and Chad, line of the movie for you.
Everyone is entitled to one good scare.
That's mine as well. It's a good throwback line. And because it was Janet Leigh delivering it, it was just all the better. We're at the top of the mountain. We're going to give this movie a rating on a 5-star scale, half-star intervals. Elizabeth, what would you rate this movie?
I'm going with my emotions. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5, only because of the elements and the things that delight me so much. It would have been a much different, much better movie if Carpenter had been involved. I do agree with that. So, but in the realm of Halloween, my top Halloween movies, I do give a 4 out of 5. Obviously, it's not like an Oscar-winning thing, but I do give it a 4 out of 5 in terms of my enjoyment of it.
Absolutely, that's a great choice. And Chad, what is your rating for this movie?
Yeah, I feel like if this movie existed in a vacuum, it would absolutely be a 2.5-star movie. But because of the history, because of the importance of the franchise, I think it's got to be 3 stars. It gave us Resurrection, which is bad, but it got Jamie Lee Curtis back into this franchise, and it's one of the best Halloweens and held up as the best Halloween in recent memory until 2018 came along.
I think that you're right. I think it reintroduced the next generation to the series, and that's why we still have it, and that's why we still care about it, and it's showing that the first one's standing the test of time. I like this movie. I have fun with it, so don't take this rating as a bad thing. I'm giving it 2.5 stars. It has problems, as I've talked about, but it doesn't mean you can't have a really good time with a 2.5-star movie. So.
Oh, yeah.
So next time we're going to get into a fun little conversation about which decade produced the best horror movies, whether it was the 70s, 80s, 90s, or today. So look forward to that on the next time in a special Halloween episode.
Chad, thank you so much. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on for the first time. And we hope you had fun.
I had a blast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
And to all the lords, ladies, and knights of the Retro Movie Roundtable, we want to thank you too and invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Particularly those Apple Podcast reviews really help the show grow and help other people find the show when they search. So it takes 30 seconds and it's a huge help to us. Give us a like on Facebook. We want to engage with you. Tell us when we post all the stuff on the movies. Give us your thoughts on it. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com if you want to expand on greater thoughts or if you want to be on the show. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Chad?
Do you like scary movies?